And in 1940, they passed the Investment Advisers Act of 1940. They created an advisor who's not a broker, who a broker is doing these transactions and selling investment products for a commission. To understand our competitive edge and what sets us apart, how we're different than most financial services firms that you've seen, it's helpful to understand how the financial services industry is structured. So let me take a step back and show you a little bit about how our industry works. Now, we as financial professionals, we all go to school. We've been to school and we've got some kind of degree or credentials. Like you might get a law degree or you might get your CPA, which stands for Certified Public Accountant, and on and on. But none of those degrees or credentials allows a person to operate as or to become a financial advisor in the industry. What allows a person to do that is taking an exam, passing that exam, and getting a license to do it. And there are different licenses that allow you to do different things. And some are more driven at the federal level, while others are more driven at the state level. But once someone gets their license, now they have a choice to make as far as who they're going to work for and what kind of structure or what kind of model, or in the industry, what we call where are we going to hang our license. And as you see on your screen, there are really three main ways that you can do this. So the first option you see there on your left are these large Wall Street names that we all know of. These brokerage firms like Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, Wells Fargo, UBS. They're affectionately referred to as wirehouse firms of the industry. Now that term is something that was developed a long, long time ago, but the name just kind of stuck and it's still around. But those are the four main wirehouse firms left. After all the consolidation that happened in the aftermath of the 2008 crisis, it went down to those four. Those are the four main ones. So we all have a choice to make. And if I made that choice, I could take my license and I could drive over to the local Merrill Lynch office here in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and I could hang my license there. And I can promise you, they would love me to do that. They would love to have me run my practice through Merrill Lynch, right? There's no doubt about that. But here's the problem that I see working for these large wirehouse firms. They have a tendency towards their own products. There's some bias there. Like, so if you go look at Morgan Stanley, like one of their clients, you get a client statement and they've got $1 million there spread across 6 different Morgan Stanley mutual funds, because Morgan Stanley has their own mutual funds. And you say to yourself, wow, okay, maybe I can believe that maybe Morgan Stanley's got the best small cap value fund because they were able to get a money manager or a fund manager. He's an absolute rock star. But do I really believe that every single one of these funds is the category killer or the leader, right? Do I really believe that? Probably not, right? Are they really the leader in each of the asset classes that they're trying to get exposure to, right? So clearly there's a conflict of interest because they're using their own funds to make more money. And that's why I talk about this conflict of interest. They have a tendency toward their own products. So you're not necessarily going to get the most unbiased objective advice. Like in this instance, they've got their client in 6 different Morgan Stanley funds. Not the 6 best funds, but that's just the world that they live in. They make more money by promoting their own money managers and by promoting their own products. Now, look, having said that, there are a lot of great people and a lot of great advisors sitting in these wirehouse offices all over the country. There's no doubt about that. And this is not a personal thing. It's not an attack. I never attack anyone individually. I'm never negative with clients. I'm just explaining the structure. And I believe that this is this brokerage model is a 20th century commission-driven model, and I believe that it's flawed. I believe that it's run its course. There are some great people there, but personally, I don't want to be part of that structure. It's the Mother Merrills of the world dictating the rules of Wall Street, passing them on down, putting shackles on the advisors to tell you what you can and can't do, what you can't sell, what you have to sell, pushing you one way because there's proprietary products and there's sales quotas to sell those products. That's the structure I have a problem with. And that's why I've decided to not choose to work with one of these big wirehouses like Merrill Lynch. And it's also why, like, when you walk into my office here in Clarkston, Michigan, it's nice and clean. It looks like a law firm and a financial advisory practice. It doesn't have a big old, a Merrill Lynch sign on the wall. There's not TVs everywhere, scrolling all the ticker symbols, everything like that. It doesn't look like a big money center like those old Schwab and Fidelity buildings, right? It is an office for personal investment advisory. Now, there's a second choice that you see in the middle of your screen there where I could hang my license, and that's through the bank channel, the one you see in the middle. Now, let me give you a little history lesson here. Now, back in the 1940s, there was actually a law that was passed called the Glass-Steagall Act. And that's the reason why banks actually couldn't be in the investment business for such a long time, was because of this law that was put into place in the 1940s. And it had been in place for a very, very long time. Again, it's called the Glass-Steagall Act, which basically forbade banks and bank holding companies from being in the investment business. So there was a wall put up between the two. And I'll tell you what happened. In the 90s, that law was repealed, which opened up the door for banks to actually now to come in and be in the investment and brokerage side of the business. So that's why, like now, if you're driving through your bank drive-through, you'll see signs for, hey, start a 529 plan here, or roll over your IRA or your 401k plan here. Here's the thing. I choose not to hang my license there because I do believe that that model and that structure is flawed as well in a different way. And that way is because usually with the bank, there is no dedicated relationship. And it is a very transactional based type of experience when you're working with the bank. So the typical scenario is what they do is they hire somebody who likely is a lesser experience. In this example, let's call him Little Johnny. Okay. So Little Johnny, he's an ambitious young man. He's looking to cut his teeth in the financial business. So Little Johnny goes to work in the bank and they give him a nice cube in the lobby and they train him what to do. And they, you know, what they also do is they train tellers now how to spot the money. So when Mrs. Jones comes in and because her $100,000 CD has come due and she complains about the paltry interest rates and she's upset, she's not sure what to do, the tellers know exactly what to do. They say, Mrs. Jones, why don't you go over there and see Little Johnny? He's a nice young man. He's extremely sharp and intelligent. I bet you he's got some ideas on what you could do with that money. And here's the thing, sure enough, Little Johnny has some tools in his toolkit. What does Little Johnny have? Well, that's going to be determined by the bank, exactly what they allow Little Johnny to sell. The banks are going to dictate it, but banks, they're selling a ton of annuities now, fixed annuities, multi-year guarantee annuities. And of course, Johnny's going to sell some mutual funds. Anything that the bank allows Little Johnny to sell, he'll do it. So Little Johnny, you know, he cuts his teeth there. But the thing is, that person who sold you 6 months or a year down the road, they're likely to be gone. And that's just the way that the banking system is set up. So if you're looking for a long-term, relational-driven consultative advisor that's going to be your guide, it's likely not going to be in the banking channel just because of the way it's structured. There's a lot of turnover. So it's not really a long-term place for clients to get their retirement planning developed. So I've chosen not to hang my license with one of these banks either. What I've chosen to do is the third option that you see on the right-hand side of your screen. And this is the only way that I believe that an advisor can operate in the 21st century. It's in this third space, this world that we call the independent world. And that's what I've chosen to do. I've hung my license with a large independent advisory firm based out of Chicago called Brookstone Capital Management. Now, Brookstone is an independent fiduciary advisory firm. You can look them up through the SEC and you can see their unblemished record. They're a phenomenal company to do business with. And through them, I have access to literally the entire universe of investment options and investment vehicles with virtually no limitations. It allows me to then pick and choose what I believe is in my client's best interest. And here's the thing. I'm not captive with Brookstone. I don't work for Brookstone. So there are no sales quotas. There are no proprietary products that they've created that they're pushing me to sell to clients. It is pure independence. And that is key. And then number two, I've got this license that allows me and actually forces me to act in the client's best interest because I am a fiduciary. So it's very important for you to understand that there are actually two standards of care in the industry, the highest one being the fiduciary standard. And we'll talk about that a little more here in a bit. And while maybe you've never heard of Brookstone Capital Management as opposed to some of the larger banks and brokerage firms, but again, I believe that this is the only way for me to operate in the 21st century with the most objectivity, the most choices, and the most flexibility to truly do what is in the client's best interest. It's the independent channel. Now, with that said, Brookstone itself is pretty large. They manage over $8 billion of client assets, and they were actually named the #1 fastest growing independent advisory firm in 2021 by Financial Advisor magazine. So that is where I've decided to hang my license and why. And we've had some really, really great success with Brookstone in that relationship with some really sophisticated portfolios with a heavy, heavy theme or dose of risk management in order to prevent large losses or drawdowns. And I would love to work together with you. I mean, I hope that's why you're watching this video. But if not, I would advise that you limit your choices to independent firms who truly give fiduciary advice. Okay. Now, to really drive home this point, the difference between brokerage firms and banks versus true independent fiduciary advisors, we're going to kind of go back and look at history. Now, back in 1929, I think we all know that the stock market crashed and the Great Depression began. Now, back then, FDR was elected in 1932, and he ran on a platform of reform, reform, reform. All these crooked Wall Street bankers, they caused this crash. We caused this depression. How are we going to rein them in? How are we going to regulate them? And how are we going to reform them? Okay. So the first thing they did in 1933 and 34, they passed what was called the Securities Act. And this is actually still modern day. This law still governs what we would call the brokerage business, like we just saw, the banks and these brokerage firms. Okay. All these modern day stockbrokers sitting in the Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley offices, this law is still in existence today, virtually unchanged. So that 1933-34 Securities Act, they allowed the brokers to be regulated under this act through a broker dealer. And here's the difference. It simply says you have a license to sell investment products for a commission. Now, this next part is important. They say you have to get to know your client, understand their goals, and your recommendation has to be suitable for your clients. And that is different than what we do as investment advisors. It has to be suitable for your clients. And the assumption was that they're always going to act in the client's best interest. But are they really? It didn't take long for them, because just 7 years later, in 1940, they created, literally with new legislation, a whole brand new type of financial advisor. In 1940, completely different legislation, completely different act, completely different rules of engagement. And in 1940, they passed the Investment Advisors Act of 1940. They created an advisor who's not a broker, a broker is doing these transactions and selling investment products for a commission. We think that there's room to have a different type of professional, one who actually provides advice. Investment advisor is about giving investment advice. It's all about advice. Now, by the way, the regulation and the laws, they don't consider brokers as giving advice. Brokers are selling a product that they are endorsing. They are not in the advice business. They are in the sales business. They're in the brokerage business. So the 1940s Investment Advisor Act created the advice advisor. To do this, you need to get a different license. It's a different exam. It's going to be a different set of rules. We know this as the Series 65 license today. That's what I have, the Series 65 license. In this, you are not selling investment product for a commission. You charge a fee, and you have to disclose the fee. Again, there's no commissions for selling investment products. So you charge a fee, whether it's an hourly fee, a flat fee, or an ongoing fee. And oh, by the way, you're upheld to a different standard of care because you're in the advice business now, and now we mean business. If you know what I'm talking about. So this suitability standard, that's nothing. That's down here. Up here, you have to agree to be a fiduciary. By law, that means you have to do what's in the best interest of your client at all times. And so now you know my choice to be with Brookstone. They are an independent fiduciary firm based on the 1940 Investment Advisors Act. And I believe that's the only way for us to operate. And so the litmus test that I would give you, if you knew nothing about this industry and you're talking about your mother's money, your precious mother, let's say that you go online and you're searching investment advisors and you pull up 100 of them. There's a list of 100. 95% of them are going to be working under the brokerage model, selling you investment products for a commission. And 5% of them are going to be investment advisors providing fiduciary advice based on the 1940 law. Now, look, again, I hope that we're able to do business together, you watching this. But again, if not, my best recommendation, again, my opinion, get rid of the 95% of advisors who work under the brokerage model, selling investment products for a commission, and work with somebody, that smaller percentage of people who give true independent fiduciary advice. And that's exactly what we do here at Sneller Financial, partnered with Brookstone Capital Management. Brookstone is an independent fiduciary firm.